Let's get one thing straight. The UFC is a multi-billion-dollar company. In 2016, it was sold to Endeavor for over $4 billion, the largest sale in sports history at the time. Since then, revenue has exploded thanks to ESPN deals, international growth, and a rabid global fan base. But here's the paradox. While the UFC is richer than ever, many of its fighters are still broke. Some are working second jobs. Some are crowdfunding training camps. Others are literally fighting while injured because they can't afford not to. So what's going on? How is it that the people actually getting punched in the face are struggling to pay bills, while executives are raking in millions? This video breaks it all down. 1. Fighter pay is a small slice of UFC revenue. Let's start with the numbers. In most major sports leagues, like the NFL, NBA, or MLB, the athletes receive around 48 to 50% of total revenue. It's a fair split. The players make the product, so they get about half of the earnings. But in the UFC, fighters receive around 16 to 20% of revenue. That's not just low, it's shockingly low. According to a class action lawsuit filed by multiple fighters, UFC revenue sharing has hovered around 18% for years. So while the UFC might pull in $1 billion in revenue in a year, fighters are only getting about $180 million of that. The rest goes to the promotion, executives, and shareholders. And because fighters aren't unionized, they have no collective bargaining power to demand better. 2. The show and win pay system is flawed. Most fighters don't get a flat paycheck. Instead, they're paid in two parts: show money, what they earn just for fighting, and win money, what they earn if they win. So if a fighter is contracted to make $20,000 to show and $20,000 to win, losing a close decision means they walk away with half of what they trained for. It creates massive financial stress and puts pressure on fighters to fight conservatively or accept short-notice fights they're not ready for, just to stay active and get paid. 3. No sponsorship freedom. Before 2015, fighters could wear their own sponsors on shorts and banners. Some made more money from sponsors than from fighting. Then came the Reebok deal, later replaced by Venom. Under this system, fighters are paid a fixed sponsorship fee, often just a few $1,000s depending on how many fights they've had. Suddenly, fighters went from making tens of thousands in sponsorship deals to a few thousand at most. This severely cut off a major income stream, and fighters had no say in it.
4. Fighters pay for their own camps, coaches, and medical costs. This part shocks a lot of fans. Unlike team sports, UFC fighters are considered independent contractors, not employees. That means they have to pay for everything themselves: coaches and training partners, gym fees, nutritionists, physical therapy, travel, management, and sometimes even their own medical treatment if they're injured in training. By the time all that's deducted, a fighter who made $40,000 to fight might walk away with less than half. And if they get injured or lose, they still owe everyone, but with no win bonus to help cover it. 5. Fighters can be cut after one loss. Here's another brutal reality. UFC contracts are one-sided. Even though fighters are often signed to multi-fight deals, the UFC can release them at any time, often after just 1 or 2 losses. That kind of job insecurity makes it hard to build a career or plan financially. Fighters are always one bad performance away from losing everything.
'Cause you know I'm all about that cake and chicken. I'm all about that cake and chicken.
And because there's no fighters union or protection, they have no guaranteed income. 6. Performance bonuses are a band-aid. UFC often promotes its $50,000 Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night bonuses as proof they reward exciting fighters. And to be fair, some fighters have earned life-changing money through those bonuses. But they're not consistent. Bonuses are completely discretionary and based on Dana White's decision. 2 fighters could have equally exciting finishes. One gets a bonus, the other doesn't. It's not a reliable part of income. It's basically a tip. 7. No long-term health coverage. UFC fighters are not covered long-term for injuries or health problems they suffer during or after their careers. Yes, the UFC will often pay for injuries sustained during a fight, but long-term damage, not their responsibility. Fighters suffering from brain trauma, chronic pain, or psychological issues get little to no support. 8. The UFC owns everything. Fighters can't use UFC logos, footage, or branding without permission. The UFC controls promotional rights, highlights, fighter rankings, publicity schedules, even their likeness in video games or merchandise. And they don't get paid extra for any of it. In most sports, players get revenue shares from jersey sales or video game royalties. Not UFC fighters. The UFC keeps that cash.
9. Fighters who speak out are silenced. When fighters like Francis Ngannou, Leslie Smith, or Randy Couture speak up about pay issues or unionizing, they're often sidelined, criticized, or cut from the promotion.
If you don't like it, there's a simple solution to this problem. Go start your own MMA organization.
10. Only a handful of stars get rich. Yes, some fighters are rich. Names like McGregor, Adesanya, Khabib, and John Jones have made millions, but they're the exception, not the rule. The average UFC fighter makes around $40,000 to $60,000 per year, with many making even less. That's before taxes and expenses. So when people say they're in the UFC, they must be rich, it's often a huge misconception.